Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the tavern. Today, we are taking a look at a discussion that was sort of spurred by a meme that I saw for Dungeons and Dragons. Got into a conversation about wizards versus sorcerers, which one is going to suit your playstyle more, and I thought that this deserved its own video. And this line here is what got me interested. They also have more spell slots than wizards because of conversion points. Credit to a Bob Tosis, I guess. So let's take a look at the wizard and the sorcerer real quick. I have them pulled up on D&D Beyond here. So let's take a look at the wizard first. So class features, scroll up a little bit, that'll give us the table. So first off, they are both full casters, so they have full caster slot progression. So that is totally equal across the two of them. If we jump to the sorcerer's table here, four, then four threes, and then two twos and two ones. Same as the wizard. No bonuses, no detriments there. If we take a look at, we're going to take a look at 2 different points. We'll say 10th level and we'll say 20th level. So halfway through your adventuring career, and then at the top end of it. And we'll touch on a few different things along the way. The most notable difference between them is if we go down to the spell casting for them. Wizards have the spellbook preparation style, and they have ritual casting. The sorcerer, as a spellcasting ability, they do not actually have ritual casting, and I had missed this originally because I don't really ever play sorcerers, so that's going to be a little bit of my bias. I'm going to try to work against it, though. So I had assumed they had ritual casting. They do not. So if sorcerers want to cast something like Detect Magic, they must spend one of their spells known on it, and they must spend a spell slot to cast the spell. Now, mind you, if you don't have 10 minutes to cast a spell, the wizard has to have the spell prepared and spend the spell slot to cast a spell as well. And I believe, here we go, let's jump back up here. Yes, so wizards have 3 cantrips, sorcerers have 4 cantrips. So sorcerers do have one more cantrip known than wizards basically throughout their entire adventuring career, and that's, I think, to make up for the lack of utility in their known spells as far as their leveled spells that they can cast. Now, the big thing that wizards get, in addition to the ritual casting, is the ability to cast them out of the spellbook without having to have them prepared. So this is automatically augmenting the amount of leveled spells a wizard can cast per day. So we're going to keep that in mind as we're going forward, but we can't really assign a physical number to that for additional spells prepped. So let's take a look at the recovery options that sorcerers and wizards have. Wizards have this arcane recovery feature, where you gain half your class level in spell slots rounded down. Here it is. When you finish a short rest once per day. So a 10th level wizard will be able to recover 5 spell slots worth of spell levels worth of slots on a short rest, up to a maximum of 5th level. So they cannot recover 6th level spells or higher. The sorcerer has the flexible casting ability in Font of Magic. Flexible casting, and they can create spell slots to create anything up to 5th level. Now it costs them 7 sorcery points to do so. So a 10th level sorcerer can spend 7 of their sorcery points, I believe, as a bonus action. Yes, bonus action on your turn to create a spell slot, and create a 5th level spell slot. To contrast that with the wizard, who can create 1 5th level slot using a short rest, an expended 5th level slot. Same for the sorcerer, you must an expended spell slot. You still have 3 more sorcery points to play around with that could create a 1st level slot and then still have 1 spell point left over for meta magic. So there is a little bit of utility there. The wizard, on the other hand, has that ritual casting to augment it, and I think the ritual casting is going to do more than that, especially because that meta magic cost for spell slots for the sorcerer is a steep price, and it comes at the cost of not being able to do all of the meta magic options that your class is specifically famous for. So the cost for having these slots is extremely high just to be able to cast 1 more 5th level spell. Now we can contrast that by taking a look at Twin Spell, because this is the most blatant example of basically having a second spell. When you twin a spell, a 10th level sorcerer, if we take a look at the sorcerer, Twin spell, whenever you cast a spell that targets only one creature and doesn't have a range of self, you can spend a number of sorcery points equal to the spell's level to target a second creature in range with the same spell. One if it's a cantrip. Keep in mind you do have extra cantrips. Let's take a look at the sorcerer table real quick. So a 10th level sorcerer is going to have 2 5th level slots. And I choose that specifically because they, in theory, can twin a 5th level spell twice. Now, what's a great 5th level spell that a sorcerer would be able to twin? Dominate Person. So the sorcerer could, in theory, effectively cast Dominate Person 4 times in an adventuring day at the most efficient exchange for sorcery points versus spell slots. Now that exchange stays consistent no matter what spell level they're twinning. It's basically 1 sorcery point is going to equal 1 level of spell slot as long as it's spent on a twinned spell meta magic, with the exception of cantrips. So sorcerers can effectively double, add an additional X value to their spells per day, spell slots per day, if we want to think of it that way, equal to their sorcerer level, because that's their sorcery point level, as long as they're spending it on twin spell meta magic. It's a much worse conversion when they're converting it to slots themselves, which would be used on things like AoE or multi-save effects or utility effects or self spells. So there is a little bit less flexibility when using twinned, but you can effectively have more spells per day than just converting it to spell slots. So for the purposes of that, we'll assume that the sorcerer is going to have plus 10 spell slots per day at 10th level. And the wizard's going to have plus 5 plus X, where X is, or we'll say plus R. And the R value is going to be the ritual casting that the wizard can do. And that will vary based on the adventuring day. So let's take a look at the higher level classes now. The sorcerer at 20th level, it gets Sorceress Restoration. Now we're assuming a short rest already, so we will assume that you'll be able to regain 4 expended sorcery points whenever you finish a short rest. And the wizard is obviously going to have Arcane Recovery and be able to recover 10 spell slots because they're now a 10th level wizard. Ritual casting is still going to be a factor, so that's going to be an R value for the wizard. And the other things that the wizard gets, if we jump to the table here, is going to be Spell Mastery and Signature Spells. So Signature Spells is our 20th level feature for wizards, and that's going to be 2 3rd level wizard spells. They are always prepared, which is fantastic, so that's plus 2 preparation. They don't count against you for number prepared, and you can cast each of them at once using 3rd level or without expending a spell slot. If you want to spend at a higher level, you have to spend as normal, or if you want to cast them a second time, you have to spend as normal. So this is effectively plus 6 levels worth of spell slots to a wizard per day. So we have the base level, plus 10 for Arcane Recovery with the short rest, plus 6 for the signature spells, plus the R for ritual value. The sorcerer is going to have their normal spells. Now, if they use all of their meta magic on twinning spells, and there are twin spells of higher levels as well, they can spend an additional 20 plus 4, assuming they get the short rest in there. They need to expend at least 4 ahead of time of their first short rest. So it's very useful to make sure that the first spell you throw out is probably going to be a twin spell. So, or at least use 4 points of your meta magic. So even if you only do 1 meta magic in that fight, you'll be able to recover on a short rest and get the best use out of that feature. But we can assume if you spend all of the sorcery points on twin spells, which would be, I believe, 2 disintegrates, 2 disintegrates, a dominate person, that would be 6, 6, so 12, plus 5, 17, and then short rest, and then you would have a banishment for 4 that puts you up to 21, and then a haste for 3, and that puts you up to 24. So effectively, you have twinned 2 disintegrate spells at 6th level each, a twinned dominate person, so 1 dominate person, 1 banishment, and 1 haste, which is a pretty good set of twin spells and very good spells for a sorcerer to have across the board. And is the one thing that sorcerers pull out over wizards is the ability to effectively cast more 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells per day. with the effective use of twin spell meta magic. Now, you can't create slots of those levels, but you can twin those spells. The power words, I believe I put in my original post. I went through D&D Beyond. The 5th level and up, there's Dominate Person. 6th level is Disintegrate and Mental Prison. 7th level is Finger of Death. 7th level is also Power Word Pain. 8th level is Dominate Monster and Power Word Stun. And 9th level, there is Power Word Kill. There is nothing else in the Sorcerer list of 5th level and higher that can be twinned. Those are your only options for twinning spells at higher levels. That said, it is beneficial to have at least one of these. I think Power Word Stun or Finger of Death. I think Finger of Death is probably the best pick here because you can cast it at a higher level and still twin it and still have an effective use of it. Disintegrate is obviously a very powerful spell as well, and I think those would be your top 2 level like sorcerer damage single target spells. And I don't think I would pick up Pain, Dominate, Monster, Stun, or Kill. I don't think I would want those spells as a sorcerer. I think there's better options on the list. But though the Disintegrate and Finger of Death are very powerful spells that are worth twinning when you do cast them because they are single target spells. So the sorcerer has the edge there in the ability to copy these spells, especially 7th level, gaining effectively a 3rd or 4th, 6th or 7th level spell slot spent as long as it's at the same time you're spending one of the slots initially. So that's pretty interesting there. The wizard, on the other hand, and I think this is the pièce de résistance, the wizard pulls in the spell mastery ability at 18th level, choosing a 1st level wizard spell and a 2nd level wizard spell that are in your spell book. So notably, make sure that you are planning ahead of time what this is going to be, and make sure you have learned the spells ahead of time when you take 18th level. Otherwise, you are basically beholden to selecting those wizard spells at 18th level as your 2 spells learned to make sure that you have the spells for spell mastery that you want to have initially. Now, you can change these over 8 hours of study in a long rest. The 20th level is more important because you cannot change them. So you want to make sure that you have the spells in your spell book that you are planning to have for signature spells by that point. Hopefully, by that point, you've most likely used the spells a few times and really love what they do. So the spell mastery, I think, is what pushes wizards over the edge in ability to cast per day. Because right now we have the sorcerer looking at plus 24 levels worth of spell slots in a typical adventuring day. We'll get into more than one short rest in a moment. But the wizard is going to have plus 16 between arcane recovery and signature spells. But they're also going to have plus R for the ritual value. Assuming maybe we'll cast Alarm once a day, especially an Abjuration wizard is going to start off in a day with Alarm. So at minimum plus 1. Maybe Leomund's Tiny Hut, that's minimum plus 4. Detect Magic once is going to be plus 5. Identify maybe once or twice is going to be plus 6 or plus 7. There are and maybe a Rarity's Telepathic Bond, especially at these higher levels. That's a massive boon on the wizard side. The real kicker, though, is going to be the spell mastery ability, and it's the ability to at will effectively turn one of your 1st level and 2nd level spells into cantrips for you, as long as you prepare them and have them prepared at all times. You can cast them at their lowest level without spending spell slots. So that's unlimited uses of Shield per day, or False Life. Unlimited uses of Misty Step is one of the big favorites, or Invisibility, or Arcane Lock. There's so many amazing uses, which is an Abjuration spell. So if you are an Abjurer, that is an Arcane Lock that doesn't cost a spell slot to start your ward every day instead of using Arcane Ward. Or using it to protect the inn, or however so you choose. And you can change it whenever you need to. That's the real benefit here. But if you are taking a short rest as wizard, we'll assume you're using Arcane Recovery. It means you've probably been in a fight, you probably spent some spell slots, you're probably recovering them. In that fight, you've probably spent maybe a couple uses of Shield, if you chose that as your spell mastery, or maybe Absorb Elements. Maybe you are a Mage Armor wizard, and in which case, to keep Mage Armor up virtually all times of the day, you have to cast it 3 times because it lasts 8 hours. So you could, in theory, select Mage Armor and always have Mage Armor up with this spell mastery feature without spending spell slots. That's plus 3 spell slots right there that you've saved by continuously keeping Mage Armor up without fail, sleeping with it up, and not having any issues. If you've cast the 2nd level spell once, that's a Misty Step, that is another plus 2. And Misty Step's a fantastic utility spell, getting out of a tight spot. Not having to spend a spell slot on it could be massively influential. Or maybe invisibility. And invisibility you can cast on an ally. You can keep giving a buff and casting invisibility on people as they need to stealth. Maybe you have a paladin in your party who's always really bad at stealth. You throw invisibility on them, so at the very least they have advantage. It's helping out a little bit. Or maybe you're bad at stealth. Maybe you dumped your dexterity. This is going to help you out a ton. That's saving you a second level spell slot. So that's maybe 5 levels worth of spell slots that are saved in just one fight of an adventuring day with spell mastery. That's going to put you at 21 already. 21 additional spell slots, so to speak. Now, if we are talking about more than one short rest in a day, the sorcerer is going to regain 4 more sorcery points. The sorcerer, so that's another banishment. However, the sorcerer has to keep spending actual spell slots to keep benefiting from Quicken Spell. If they don't spend spell slots, they don't get any benefit at a 1-to-1 ratio for these sorcery points. So it is a diminishing returns resource. They can't keep casting 6th level spells twinned or 7th level spells twinned when they run out of 6th and 7th level spell slots. So they can only cast and twin Disintegrate twice. No matter how many times they short rest, they're not getting back a 6th level spell slot. And they can only twin Finger of Death twice because they're not getting back a 7th level spell slot in any way. Now, wizards aren't either, mind you. But the diminishing returns, the longer an adventuring day goes, and this especially holds true for games that are playing with gritty realism, where a short rest is 8 hours and a long rest is a week, you're going to have 7 short rests or 6 short rests potentially, or 3 short rests in a dungeon where you're spending 8 hours resting and you're getting the benefits of a short rest. The wizard's going to get an arcane recovery in there, but make fantastic use of ritual spells. Learman's tiny hut lasting 8 hours is now safe for a short rest. That's huge for the party, and you're going to spend it 3 times. But the sorcerer's only going to get back 4 sorcery points as a 20th level sorcerer. The wizard's going to get more mileage out of spells spent. Now, if you are playing a Monster of the Week style campaign where you might only have 1 short rest or maybe no short rests in an adventure, I think the sorcerer is going to pull ahead because you're going to be having more combats in a day. You're going to be more focused on hunting a monster or bounty hunting or things like that. If you are playing a game that's a lot of social intrigue, the sorcerer might have the edge on the wizard because it is a charisma-based caster versus a intelligence-based caster. If your party already has a charisma-based character or has a different party face, such as a swashbuckler, rogue, a paladin, or a bard, or maybe even a warlock, the sorcerer's ability to be a charismatic character and a party face is diminished because the role's already fulfilled. Whereas the intelligence-based character fills a unique role in the knowledge skills that other characters don't have their primary ability score contributing to. So the benefits of wizard versus sorcerer, the other effects, are very, very dependent on the campaign and style of game you're playing. In a long-form campaign, especially with gritty realism, I think the wizard is much, much stronger. In an adventure where maybe it's high adventure and epic heroes, where short rests are a minute and long rests are an hour, the sorcerer is going to do so much better because taking a long rest of an hour and regaining all of your sorcery points lets you blow all of your meta magic much more safely without being exposed to the risk of burning through your resources too quickly. Quicken Spell is one of the most dangerous meta magics, in my opinion, to use because how quickly it burns through your resources. Being able to quicken a spell here and there while still throwing out a cantrip is going to ensure that you're doing extra spells every turn and doing the cantrips that you want to do. Maybe you want to drop that Cloud Kill, so you quicken a cantrip and then throw the Cloud Kill out, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter too much. But the meta magic and the sorcery point cost and the lack of recovery on short rests for sorcery points until you hit 20th level is a huge potential resource drain to sorcerers, whereas the wizard's resource drain and their massive spell list by comparison and use of ritual spells is going to augment the wizard's ability to cast more over the day than the sorcerer will. The sorcerer, mind you, the ability to twin spells like haste or cloud kill, you can't twin cloud kill, but haste or disintegrate and these massive swingy spells are incredibly powerful. And if I'm playing a one-shot adventure where I know I'm going to have 2 fights and very little anything else and not going to have to take a long rest, I might prefer to have a sorcerer on my team than a wizard, because the sorcerer is going to be more of that panic Nova button in combat. But in a party makeup with something like maybe a paladin or an assassin rogue that can also deal that type of Nova damage where the paladin crits and dumps in a 4th level smite, or the rogue sets up for an assassinate sneak attack or something, and we can coordinate that Nova damage, the sorcerer's effect in combat is going to be diminished, whereas the wizard's effect in combat to control the flow of the battlefield, as well as protect the party and have utility spells elsewhere, is going to be accentuated. So the sorcerer and wizard are going to be very party dependent in addition to campaign setting / adventure dependent. Depending on what you like to play, if you want to play that high damage character, you don't want to have to worry about managing spells and your spell book and preparation, you just always have the spells. Sorcerer can be a lot of fun to play. The meta magic is super interesting and a totally unique feature, and I love it. The wizard, on the other hand, has this inherent utility built in if you want to play a more knowledgeable character, or you feel dirty using a little bit of meta knowledge and you want to be able to play the intellectual character, so you can roll, say, would my character, and I know as a player that is an aberration, but would my character know that it's an aberration and that banishment will be good against it? Sure, make an Arcana check, and you are good at Arcana inherently because it's an intelligence skill. So if you want to play that type of character, maybe the wizard's the right fit for you. Personally, the reason I prefer playing wizards, and it's really tied to this one ability here. Let me, class features is your spellbook, this section right here. And the reason I love this is the roleplay elements of what you decide your spellbook is. I've played a dwarf who had a bag of runes that he etched his spells into. And whenever he would go through his spellbook, he would hold each rune in his hand and flip it over and over and over, studying the patterns that he's made into this about like 5 centimeter or like 2-inch sized stone. Like flat stone, and he'd flip it over and over and over in his hands, and that was the page of his spellbook that we'll say Force Cage spell is on. So when he's preparing Force Cage, he's just looking at the rune over and over, practicing it, memorizing it, the ancient dwarven words and everything like that. A lot of fun to roleplay. The reason I like wizards mostly is at heart I'm guilty of being a min-maxer. I love the hunt for better and new magic items. And playing the wizard and this feature of this spellbook and copying spells into it and replacing it and building this collection lets me give to the dungeon master, when I do get to play a character, give to the dungeon master this avenue to reward my character and the roleplay that I do with my character, these quote-end quote magic items in new spell scrolls that are single use, or I can spend my gold and time copying into my spellbook. That's not inherently breaking to the game, whereas if I was a paladin and I'm searching for new magic items, at a certain point, there's only so many things I can carry or so many things I can be attuned to. And I'm constantly searching for that next best magic item. Whereas the wizard, I can feel very fulfilled with a wizard without having to have any magic items that I'm attuned to, without having anything awarded, because I've found different scrolls over my adventuring career. I've copied them into my spellbook. I've built a collection of these magical artifacts and storytelling that I've gained as part of the feature of the class. And that's one of my favorite things about wizards, is it's my opportunity to quest for items that will inherently not break the game. It's just a little bit of advancing my ability to be more utility if I know what's coming. It lets me play into the detective role and the planning role a little bit better. It lets me have the opportunities to and the that puts the onus on me as a player to try to plan what we're going to be encountering in a day and prepare the correct spells, because now I have a bevy of spells to choose from, because I've worked hard to gain access to a mage's college, or negotiated an exchange of a spellbook, or I specifically spent extra time as the building was burning down to look for the mage's spellbook before it got destroyed, and I salvaged it and was able to save maybe 10 spells out of it. And I spent weeks of time in the evenings meticulously learning them and copying them into my spellbook. It doesn't break the game like getting a +1 magic item and then turning and looking for a +2 magic item or magic weapon. The access to new spells is still limited by the fact that I can only prepare so many as a wizard. And that's what I love about the wizard over the sorcerer, in my personal opinion. But what do you prefer to play? Do you think the sorcerer has more spells and more utility than the wizard because they don't have to prepare, they just always have their spells? Do you think the meta magic, the flexibility of it and the choices and the ability to customize your sorcerer has more of an impact on the wizard's ability to customize what you do based on your subclass and which spells you choose to learn and prepare? I think, personally, because I love the world building and I love the ability to have the DM reward me for roleplay without risking breaking their game or being worried about breaking their game, the wizard is the choice for me. 9 out of 10 times. That said, I've enjoyed the bard every now and then, so I'm not estranged to charisma casters. It's just the wizard. The wizard speaks to me on a different level. This idea of this person who can figure out what is needed and prepare and act accordingly, and being rewarded for that, and being able to set myself up for success by searching and questing and purchasing and transcribing the spells that I think I might need down the road. And that's an immensely joyful part of the roleplay to me. But what do you think? Do you prefer the sorcerer? Do you prefer the wizard? Or do you hate both of them and you say bard all the way? Maybe you're one of those persons who absolutely loves the warlock. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. I've heard Treant Monk's opinion on the warlock, and I think it's a very interesting one where you get to pick these incredibly niche utility spells because you only need to cast 1 or 2 spells a day, and you just know them. But I'll get into that in another video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my content to anyone you think might enjoy it. If you want to support me on Patreon or PayPal, my links are in the description down below. If you want to see more discussion videos like this and more of me responding to random Reddit threads, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel and the notification bell is ticked so you will get notified whenever I post a new video. We'll see you next time.